Hi there. First of all, thank you very much, Dave, for warming up the crowd for me. I guess it's a rather boring issue I'm going to talk to now compared to all those agile and fancy stuff happening in the Jira team. Well, the way I'm dressed up, you can probably guess where I come from. I come from a financial institution. I'm working there as a project manager, and we're using Jira to ease up the pain and to do lots of other stuff. When I was asked to give a talk here, Arne, who is basically my boss, and I decided or had to argue about what kind of talk we want to give. When the fact was derived that we have to give this talk in English, it was up to me. Therefore, so first of all, please bear with me because English is not my first language, but I'm pretty good at telling dirty jokes usually. And the topic of the talk is something that is, let me say, special perhaps for financial institutions. This is what I call how to ensure the chain of custody with Jira. Chain of custody is something like we call Beweiskette, would be used in a jurisdictional context. Why is traceability in software development so important? Traceability is demanded by regulatory bodies like the BaFin, or in English it's the FSA, the Financial Service Authority. Why do they do that? I think everyone can remember the financial crisis that happened a couple of years ago and still is ongoing, low interest rates and so on. And that leads to the fact that also in terms of software development, the authorities are having a very close look upon actually what are financial institutes doing and how is stuff getting into production and why is it getting into production as well and has it been properly tested. And this might sound pretty usual stuff for you, like, yeah, we do it every way, we test something, we do it, and then it goes into production. But if you happen to work at an institute that's developing software for like 20 or 40 years now, and where people come from different companies and you are developing software on a mainframe using COBOL, using a different team developing on a mainframe, a different stack of, a different framework, developing on PL1 and so on, up to Java, C++, you name it, we got it basically. So we're a very mixed shop in terms of what we develop and also what are our customers. Is it a mainframe application that is supposed to remain on the mainframe, or will we go out for like 15,000 people using a desktop PC and trying to roll out the stuff for them? So that leads basically to the fact that we make sure that regulatory bodies are happy with what we provide. There's a common sense view to all of that. Basically, the IT department must not change or modify software without a specified demand or request from the business side. I think that's pretty clear. Even though we are capable in terms that we are an administrator of changing the IT systems, we are not allowed to do that without customers' consent. I mean, that's common sense. Next thing is we need traceability, and traceability means we need it for every version that makes it up into the live system. And traceability then means, first, which specific business demands are bundled into that version. Every demand needs a test case as a definition of done. Sounds reasonable, hopefully. Which test cases have been executed during the test cycles. Honestly, our shop does not run very much on the big C, like CI, CT, or CD, whatever. Pretty much stuff is done manually. So that also means testing is mostly done manually. Most of the test cases are written down and people have to execute them using common sense, collecting the test data, anonymizing that, and using that to perform the tests. Next thing is the business side has to agree that this specific version can go live. So because they are basically the people who tell us, we want this feature from you, you build it, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, tests are okay, go into production. And for sure, for the test results for each executed test case have to be available. Conclusion, and you can get that from pretty much any regulatory body, an unstructured collection of office documents is inadequate. Oh, it's not adequate. Very good, thank you very much. So much for QA. To meet the regulatory requirements. So why is it a problem then? This is a world before Jira, before we use Jira to document this chain of custody. Requirements, now I'm going to use fancy laser technology. Okay, cool. The business demands, requirements, are collected in the tool using RRC. It's from Rational, it's called Rational Requirements Composer. Or you can use Excel, or Word, or jotted down notes, or basically everything. And this is what life is. The customer has an idea, tries to put it into a certain kind of context and says, this is my demand, you are the professionals, make something out of it, build me a product around it, or this is a product, I want to have it enhanced. And the customer doesn't necessarily do it in a very structured way. And so we have very different stuff, but if it comes in a good way, it's in RRC. Next thing is test cases. Test cases, we have a completely different tool. So this is called SQS. I guess a few people of you know all those tools. Here you write down your test cases. You can write down which kind of test data you need, and you can even, let me say, put a kind of automation behind it so that if you just press on the test case, it would be executed automatically. That would be the theory. Next thing is, where do you collect the bugs? I mean, we learned that Jira is derived basically from Bugzilla in a very, very early stage. And in business, you often find RCQ for Rational ClearQuest. And what the pain in the neck is, to get all the information across those different systems, you either have to build up specific interfaces, which are, again, a pain in the neck to maintain, pretty costly, or you use Excel, which is the data glue of the 80s, 90s, and 2000 years. And this is what happened in our shop. We use Excel sheets everywhere. The good guys basically automate the Excel sheets. Macro here, VBA there, and it's very nice to look at. You press on it and everything gets sorted out. You have basically the reference from the business demand to the test case and so on. Good thing. Problem is with such highly individual Excel sheets, they only work in one department, usually only with one guy. And if that guy leaves the company or changes department, it's broken down and you start up again scrolling with your finger and trying to find all the references between test cases and business demands. In theory, we should all link this into a version, which then gets deployed into software only if the business side confirms. We are using a system, it's called MKS, which basically transports the stuff between certain stages of our development, from development over test to the live system. This would be the normal steps we conclude or we do. Currently, we have a very strong focus on release dates. We release most of our software 4 times a year. So we're very fixed upon those Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4 release dates. Excel is, as I told, ubiquitous data glue. Using exports, imports, everything, we try to match the data, the references between all those, let me say, dedicated or special systems. And the management of demands, test case, and errors usually happens in a project context. And I don't mean Jira project, but project context. So if we want to change a major application, we set up a project, put a project manager on it, and then everything is done in a project context. What happens after you close the project, you lose all this stuff from an application point of view, because I think that's all valuable for an application. It's necessary that the application knows which kind of errors or bugs happened during testing, or which kind of test cases we have, for example, to build up regression testing. Regression testing doesn't necessarily have to be run automatically. Also manual regression testing basically confirms just my application still works as it used to be. And the same for demands, because from my point of view, all fulfilled business demands are something like the capital on your application, because if you need another application that does the same thing, for example, imagine you have all your business demands compiled to build up something like Jira, and 10 or 20 years in the future, you want a new system. You start compiling this list from scratch. But if you have all the old business demands that you compiled once to build Jira with it, at least you have a good starting point. And this is what I call the capital for an application. And banking applications are not as, let me say, volatile as perhaps Jira or Confluence. They're pretty stable. A core banking system usually is in place for decades. I mean, that's basically just interest. Okay. Easing the pain using Jira. Dave told me today that this is no sales pitch for Jira, but basically we are using Jira to ease the pain, like aspirin or whatever, and it helps a bit. What was our goal? Our goal was to create a central reference point to meet all the regulatory demands. We wanted to move the relevant information first in something like an application context. So back from a project-centric view into an application-based view. And we wanted to, or at least that's our goal, to move the information back from all those satellite tools that are at the periphery of Jira or of the application into the application context using Jira. That was one of the plans. How did we try to do this? We wanted to create references and links to the remaining or surrounding systems to ensure the chain of custody so that I can, for example, take my business demand, follow up via test cases, which bugs happened during the test execution, when was this business demand put into which version and put into the live system, which again is what we need to prove. Or show me the order of transport, when was the version transported into the live system, and follow all the chain back. Those are basically the two ways we have to be able to deduce. And our mantra was no redundancy, because in the old days we used to export, for example, all the business demands, import them into SQS for the test cases, and then create manually links between the now imported business demands to the test cases. So we know if this test case fails, which business demands is not fulfilled or not met. And for example, when someone starts working further on the business demands, you have to do this process all over again. Therefore, we said no redundancy. Keep information in the original systems or migrate completely. What was the first thing we did? The first thing we did was a migration of RCQ into Jira. That was the easiest stuff, basically, because Jira, that's its origins, bug tracking. And so moving from ClearQuest into Jira was easy. I think we underestimated the capabilities of large organizations to withstand any change. Therefore, it took quite some, let me say, approaches to reach that goal. But I'm happy that at the end of this year, we will shut down all remaining RCQ instances and servers. And already today, all new, if a project comes or a new application needs a RCQ workspace, we will only provide Jira workspaces and perform the actual required Schulung training. Exactly. Okay. The next thing, this is where we are currently at, is moving away from RRC, which is a political, very interesting tool in our shop, because the business side also has to work with RRC. And that means we trained the business side probably like a couple of decades ago onto that tool. And so it's very hard to change away from that tool. That means we cannot just from a, let me say, cost perspective, or we think that the process is better, just like move away. We have also to gain the support, the buy-in from the business side. But we're working on that. And right now, I think we're on a very, very good way, because the herd is already moving, the cattle is moving into the right direction. And we're starting to manage our requirements using Jira. This is, for example, where the guys from K15t came in to support us. First, we started up with a project to manage demands together with Confluence in Jira, which was basically just the lure to lure in some guys of the business side to give us the political support to be able to kill RRC. So you see, it's a two-step approach here, but so far we're pretty successful, I think. And right now we are using in a small sample of first pilot projects or cannery projects, Dave would say, we're using bugs and requirements in Jira. We still have the problem of the surrounding systems. I'll come to that on the next page. And we also have the problem, I think all of you know that, if you are maintaining a version or trying to promote or maintain a version in Jira, you can't add any meta information to a version. Version only has version name and then the list of issues that's attached to it. And I think what Dave did or showed us in his slide set, like the release task, we did basically the same. We also created a version task that's able to collect all the meta information that's required, for example, to release a version into production. Could be that this issue collects only the the written order and scanned in order from the business side that says, this version is okay, thank you very much. Or for example, the complete list of tests that were conducted and executed, that also has, due to regulatory reasons, has to be signed from the business side. All this kind of stuff, we just use it as a data safe or whatever for stuff that we want to be attached to a certain version. Interims result, the traceability is given using Jira as a central information hub. That makes the auditors very happy. So because now we can basically give them Jira and say, you have questions about a certain version, you start from the version, you see all the requirements because they were for sure linked to the version, and so on. You know the story. And also the traceability is given for applications based on versions. That makes the developers happy. But only if, and this is because Weil wrote old style if and only if, they see the light. Because the application developers have to accept that they need to plan in versions and no longer in releases. On a release date, you release certain versions, but it's a different thing. And some of the developers, especially if let me say even older than I am, it's hard for them to grasp. Okay. What's the current situation after the easing the pain process? Requirements are in Jira, the bugs are in Jira. Test cases are still in SQS. Right now we are checking out the Zephyr add-on or plugin to see if that will be a worthwhile, let me say, substitute for SQS. And then we will aim into that direction too and try to make the move again. So basically moving all those satellite systems into Jira and basically just into one version of the application we want to maintain or we want to release. And the same is true for the development, for the deployment system, MKS, which is an issue system on its own. Does anyone know MKS, the MKS integrity? Ah, okay, cool. Nicht sehr begeistert. Okay, and here we're using something like a dump reference, not just like no real integration of the two tools, because integration always is costly, and as I told before, you have to maintain it. And so we're just creating a dump reference between the numbers of the versions and basically MKS ticket number, which is good enough for a start. And in the future, we'll have to see whether MKS will survive or we'll completely migrate it into our change management tool. So what's now basically the conclusio here? The software versions as the central element to manage the required information and no longer the release date. So I think that's one goal we're aiming at. The migration of version-specific information into Jira, away from the satellite systems, referencing for still existing peripheral tools like MKS and SQS still exist, but it's only dump links, dump references, no intelligence in there. So just that the auditor can basically follow it back and say, okay, I have the ticket number, go to the next tool and check it out there. And a strong refocus on application management, shift away from the project-centric approach, which I think is something that a software shop should do. We're not a project management shop, we should be a software shop. Jesus. What's the quintessence? First of all, some pain points. We learned that during our migration approaches that lots of processes or just way the people were basically designed around the tool or with a certain tool in mind. That makes it hard because if you want to move away from that tool, you also have to change the way that people work much more than you intended to do. The guys responsible for the tools are clinging onto that tool. If you try to migrate away from the tool, they're kind of afraid of losing their job, whatever, but we experience very much resistance from the guys responsible for the tools, not for the processes. And sometimes they're basically endangering or obstructing the way to your big picture that we want to migrate or move most of the information into Jira and manage applications in there, not only project or not only keeping the project-centric view in mind. As I told before, we're the IT shop for the Büschgens, for the W&W. We have about 500 developers, and changing the mindset from a mainframe developer who is 50 plus years old and using mainframe only tools into using a web-centric tool like Jira. It's not like preaching to the converted exactly, to be honest. It's more just the other way around instead. Yeah. It's like standing up, running against the wall with your head, falling down, dust yourself up, put yourself back in the saddle and try that again. Every single day.
For many times.
For many times, yeah. That explains my very, then one of our, one of the other problems was we wanted to build a generic solution. We have quite a couple of application development departments. Every one of them has their own processes, but we wanted to provide a generic tool and process that holds up for the auditors and also for developers, for everyone, because we have so many individual solutions. We just wanted to get rid of this. And if you go, for example, for the application developers who work for the insurance, they say, oh, come on, I don't need this traceability. Yeah, but in 2 years, because then the auditors for the insurance will have the same, let me say, stuff for you. And the bank people say, yeah, but can't we just build something very special for the bank? I don't need all this generic version-like stuff. And completely leaving out perhaps the Java people and so on. Our goal was to build something that everyone can understand and hopefully live with. And also very interesting is I think that an 80% solution that is accepted by all people is much more worth than a 120% pure distilled alcohol version of a tool or of a solution that only works for you or just a couple of people. Not everyone sees that point, but I think Dave pointed it out pretty much. Collaboration is the key here. And if we put people into an integrated tool and enable them to collaborate, it's much more worth or much better than just keeping them in isolated islands. Okay, lessons learned. Standardization is crucial for success. We need to manage like 600 plus applications with Jira. And just imagine that every Jira project comes out, yeah, you know, the requirements workflow, yeah, I see you have a standard, but triage, you know, we don't call it triage. Can we call it like something different? And, you know, you have those two statuses. Can we perhaps like make 3 out of them because we want to differentiate? It's bullshit. It's like in the Lord of the Rings, there's one ring to rule them all, and you have to force them down. Honestly, it is like that. There has to be, if you want to work with 600 plus Jira workspaces or Jira projects, you have to enforce standards in terms of issue types, in terms of workflows, else you will not be able to execute übergreifend? Overall, for example, dashboards or filters or anything. And that's one of the things we want to do. Another crucial thing was offering a central point of contact to help the people, because if they start talking about, you know, Jira, those Jira idiots, it's not good, you know, I tried to do this and it didn't work. There has to be a small group of people being able to go to those people, draw them away from the coffee shop, from the coffee machine, and tell them, okay, what's your problem? Show it to me, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you fix your filters and how to read the dashboard, because often the people they don't even understand how to read the dashboard properly. That also has to be part of the training. What I told before, remain consistent, don't falter. You will have lots of, let me say, resistance in terms of, yeah, but I always used issue tape improvement. It was so good to have this special issue type, but as Dave told before, don't rely upon issue types, they're not necessary. Okay, not too many changes at once, or you will lose too many people. When we started up with getting away from RCQ, ClearQuest, RRC, there was a nice window of opportunity. We wanted to jump onto that. And then we said, perhaps SQS too. It just feels right to do it now. And then the boss of the SQS team told us, you know, you stirred up the crowd so very much right now with taking away RCQ, with right now taking away RRC. Just keep a lid on it. Please just shift down a gear and easy, slow. Let's first have an effect on that. Let's take these changes effect, and then make the next step and change the next tool. Okay. Yeah. This leads me to, not every window of opportunity has to be used. That was really, we learned that the hard way. That we jumped onto every opportunity when someone told us, oh, this tool is rubbish, we need to get rid of it. Yes! Go on to it, we try to do this. Okay, next steps. It's pretty obvious. I mean, the road is not yet paved completely, but we'll surely follow that path pretty much on. So the goal is to remove the satellites as fast as possible, to keep the developer-centric information into Jira. not like the process relevant like MKS. We want to move that, for example, onto the change management tool. And I think that's also very important. The next migration scenarios have to be planned and also negotiated with the stakeholders. Yeah, it sounds like old rubbish, but it just comes down to this. And for example, the guys responsible for the tools are very important stakeholders because you have to offer them an alternative. And the alternative should be not administering another tool, but basically being part of the Jira success story, if possible. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
We got a t-shirt for you as well.
Ah, perfect. Fits perfectly.
Yeah, just put it on over it, over the shirt. Thanks a lot for your enlightening talk. Your English is really good, I would say.
Thank you very much.
So I think we have time for 3 questions. Anyone? Questions? No one has a question. Dave, you visited those guys in the afternoon. You're a really young company, only 12 years old, 13 years old. What did you learn from them?
Sorry. Hey, Ryan. Yeah. You're not going to tell me that my English is good?
What's that? Yeah, our English is good as well. It's not as Australian as I would expect from someone living in Sydney. But
Hey, g'day. What I really thought was interesting is that, we're both. I think that you guys are, as a large company, you're in the position where everybody's developed their own tool that they have that's specialized for the test. Every department has their own tool. HR team has their tool, test team has their tool, the development teams have their set of tools, the business analysts have their tools for requirements, and the onus is on you guys to convince everybody that consolidation on one tool is better than everybody having their own 120% solution, like you mentioned in your slide, and a lot of smaller companies where you're a little bit more resource constrained, or you think that your tool that you develop can do everything, like at Atlassian. The onus is at Atlassian, you basically have to prove. The HR person has to say, I need to get a dedicated HR applicant tracking system because Jira is not cutting it anymore. Like, you're expected to use Jira or Confluence for every single possible business case until proven otherwise. And ironically, whether we're a young company or an old company, you converge kind of on the same point, which is that the overall lesson is that you have to be realistic about what works, and you need to prioritize actual value over dogma or over politics or over company philosophy. I think that's basically what I took away.
You say something about it? Do you want to add something to that?
I will. Yeah. Just one easier said than done.
So, do we have any other questions?
How many percentage of changing do you did to Jira in terms of developing add-ons or customizing? Or did you just use the default options of Jira to customize?
Just turn around, I think it's 80 degrees, no, it's a bit more 100 degrees. Those are the 3 guys doing it in our shop.
I think we have the 80% standard version. 85, and we just add 2 or 3 status in the standard workflow, just to give a little a sweetie to the requirement to get them a sweetie. Okay, we have the inquiry. Yes, happy, you good guys, and so. But that's all enough, and then we say stop it now. At this point, we want to maintain the standard, so we have administrators from Jira. We have a happy life to go with the standard, and that's what we propagate to our departments.
So no custom plugin development.
Yes, from K15t, some 2 or 3 plugins. but these plugins is to maintain the Jira, the 600 projects, to get this in a whole scheme thing and to get them updated all at the same time and something like this.
So to maintain the system, not to add value to the customers.
Yes, yeah, we have some custom fields, but just under 10 or something like this. Not extreme things. That's the mantra we told. Yeah, we use standard and we want to propagate this just on the standard way. 80%, 85% is standard.
Okay, thanks a lot.
One other question. Anyone?
So just to add
You
to
asked a
that,
question. That's all.
well, can I talk or do I should it be like Jeopardy where I say what is and then so I mean, you know, Jira at the end of the day, it's built to be extensible. Like we didn't build a plugin system, and we don't have 4 guys working really hard on our REST API so that nobody uses it. The idea is that you build on top of it, and you know, at Atlassian we take we kind of have 2 different approaches for 2 different sides of the business. And the Jira team, we're pretty dogmatic that we don't use any add-ons or plugin. We don't use any add-ons or customizations because we're building Jira, and we think that on the Jira team we should make sure that the default experience that a customer is going to get is good enough for us to develop Jira with, and if not, we need to make the defaults better. And the defaults in Jira are total shit right now. The default workflow is terrible. The default issue so we're actually we're working really hard on making those defaults better. But in the rest of Atlassian, we definitely go crazy with plugins and add-ons to kind of supplement our existing workflows. Like you saw that I showed that Jira release ticket screenshot up there. Like those lists of artifacts and tests that have passed that are added as comments. Like nobody writes those manually. Like even the ticket is not generated manually. The ticket is generated by an automatic Bamboo deployment when you say, okay, I'm going to deploy this into the release branch of Jira. Then we create the ticket manually, and it goes and grabs the release notes automatically. So that way you don't actually have to do any of that. And that's the kind of thing that we're building on top of what we already have to smooth out our processes. And we totally expect that somebody is going to have a slightly different process, and we can't predict every single process. And that's why we have the plugin system and the API in order to make Jira work to your needs.
But you're also like feeding all those ideas you create in those add-ons back to the core, so...
Yeah, absolutely. I think almost every feature that, not just Jira, but Confluent, for example, likes in Confluence was originally just a plugin that we wrote that it didn't even like actually like a page. All it did, it was an extension that we wrote for Confluence that would paste in a picture of a thumbs up as a comment. And so you'd have these pages with like 24 just pictures of people with thumbs up. And that was the original implementation of likes, because we thought likes would be a good idea. And then we built it in as a feature in Confluence.
Okay, so I think I won't keep you longer from the pizza. If you have questions, just approach Dave, approach Tom, approach anyone, and have a good time. Thanks for coming.